We strongly condemn these attacks. And we strongly condemn any attack that is aimed at innocent people.
Hello, this is Paul from debatelive.com. After the Manchester attack, there has been a sudden rise in Taqiyya. So what is Taqiyya? Let's first talk about Islam for a bit. Islam consists of 3 books. One of the core principles of Islam is the principle of jihad. In the Quran it is said 91 times to follow the example of Muhammad. The best way to follow the example of Muhammad is by reading the Seerah, which is Muhammad's biography. 67% of the Seerah is about the jihad. Another term that is used a lot within Islam is the concept of the kafir, the unbeliever. 60% of the total body of Islamic literature is about the kafir, is about us, and that is a lot. 64% of the Quran, 81% of the Seerah, and 37% of the Hadith. So of the Seerah, 81% is about the kafir, and 67% is about the jihad. So there is an overlap. This is not surprising because the goal of the jihad is the spread of Islam, and Islam is spread by convert, kill, or pay jizya to become a dhimmi, which is so uncomfortable that dhimmis historically often decided to convert anyway. So who has to convert, be killed, or pay jizya? That's right, the kafirs. So that makes sense. So there is a constant war against the kafir, and not every Muslim participates in this war, obviously, but around half of them support it if another Muslim does it. And the other half that does not support it still doesn't protest against it, and they are still unwilling to speak honestly about Islam. And it is interesting to note that Muslims who pray more often are more likely to want Sharia as the law of the land. So Muslims who take their religion more seriously are more likely to support Sharia. And the implementation of Sharia is also the goal of those Muslims who fight against the kafirs. So those Muslims who take their religion more seriously are more likely to agree with the goals that terrorists are trying to reach, to establish Islam worldwide. So even though they aren't engaging in terrorism themselves, they do agree with the terrorists. They want the same thing. So let's talk about imams. And this is where it gets interesting. Imams are people who dedicated a lot of their time into Islam. So they're very likely to take Islam very seriously, because otherwise they wouldn't invest all their time into it. So imams know perfectly well that the ongoing war against the kafir, something that we call terrorism, is part of Islam. It is part of the jihad. It is in the books. All the Muslim leaders know it. 1400 years of Islamic history knows it. And in the Muslim world itself, imams don't make a secret of it. But in countries where Muslims are not in the majority yet, they can't admit it. And therefore there is this Islamic principle called Taqiyya. And Taqiyya is to misrepresent the own ideology in the face of the non-believer. So even though those people know that the war against the kafir is a fundamental part of Islam, they won't admit this to the kafir, as long as the kafir is still in the majority. So from the perspective of Islam, implementing Taqiyya in Europe is very important these days. Okay, so back to the Manchester attack. What you'll see after the Manchester attack is that all these imams and Muslim activists implement Taqiyya by saying, oh, we condemn the attack, and please understand that this has nothing to do with Islam. Islam is peaceful. So again, not all Muslims engage in the war against the kafir, and not all Muslims implement Taqiyya. But there are Muslims who do it, and they've been on British television. It happens a lot. Let's take a look.
We strongly condemn these attacks. And we strongly condemn any attack that is aimed at innocent people. I just wish the world would understand the situation that those terrorists do not represent our faith. They do not represent our religion.
So here we have a man who is an imam, meaning that he has dedicated a lot of his time to Islam. So the chance that he knows the ideology is very high. But he says that those terrorists, meaning Muslims who engage in the war against the kafir, do not represent our faith. Look, you can never be 100% sure that somebody is lying. They could also just be misinformed. but the chance that an imam, somebody who takes Islam very seriously, is misinformed is very, very small. So therefore the chance that this man implemented taqiyya by saying this is very high.
I think one of the things is that first and foremost, before we start, just want to extend our condolences and sympathies to the families of the deceased. I think it's still very raw in the hearts of many people, and it's important that we always keep that in mind, and of course our prayers are with them. In terms of your question, I think one of the main elements is to actually look at the sources of radicalization. And I think that it's a very, very complex situation. We can't actually use as one facet. It's actually a multifaceted element. And it can include various variables, such as the concept of isolation from the community, lack of Islamic knowledge. You have, of course, the foreign policy element. You have harassment. You have unemployment, family issues, mental health. So there are a multitude of elements.
Okay, so this is a smart guy. He has learned to adopt the narrative of political correctness. What causes terrorism? What is at the root of this phenomenon? And he then very cleverly produces a wide variety of excuses. Oh, it has nothing to do with Islam. It is even a lack of Islamic knowledge. And he then mentions a few reasons that have nothing to do with the Islamic community, but instead with the British community. Harassment, unemployment. Oh, he just couldn't get a job. And this works very well on the average politically correct Brit, because it creates guilt in the native community. Ah, it's all our fault. We're just too racist. He just felt marginalized and rejected. Very smart.
And I think that's the kind of first starting point, to look at that as opposed to looking at the communities themselves.
So if we know these are the ways, and let me put this to Mohammed as well, if we know these are the ways to do it, why is it not working?
Well, I think what you look at where we were 10 years ago and where we are now, we've seen a tremendous amount of work being done by the imams and the mosques and the community to root out this evil that exists. One of the most important things that we've got to confront is the ideology of violence. Islamic teachings have been distorted. They've used, the suffering of what is happening in Syria and other parts of the world as an excuse to brainwash people.
Okay, of course, don't look at the Muslim communities themselves. So he's also protecting his own community from scrutinization. Okay, next one.
To say, come on, we need to do more, you need to do more,
100%.
What can we do?
I think Muslims all have to stick together now. We all have to stick together with different races. I mean, in all different religions, there's always good and bad. And, me being a Muslim, I mean, this is something that's against our religion, killing innocent people. In the Quran, it doesn't say that, you should kill innocent people. I mean, this is something we're all against.
So as you can see, this is very common. And sometimes Muslims don't implement taqiyya consciously. It's not like they think, okay, now I implement taqiyya, 1, 2, 3. No, in the majority of the cases, it's unconscious. It's something that's just ingrained into their collective psychology. When you talk to the kafir, you don't tell them the truth. The ummah, the Muslim community, is more important. Also, imagine this man saying the opposite. Imagine him saying, oh yeah, it definitely has something to do with Islam. It's in the Quran. Of course, no Muslim is going to say that. It would get this Muslim into massive trouble with his own community. Don't forget that Islam is basically a cult, a collectivist cult. There are Muslims and non-Muslims.
Press TV's correspondent Roshan Stalla has talked to members of the Muslim community in the UK who condemn Monday's deadly bombing in the city of Manchester.
We came here to give respect to the people who lost their life last night. It's a tragedy, actually. We have come here to sympathize, and we are here as a peace-loving people. We don't believe in this type of atrocity. We believe in peace and calm.
We have this kind of thinking and this thought that whenever an incident occurs, the ripple effects is people start to take the laws into their own hands, which then instill fears in the minority. Hence, what has happened yesterday was absolutely not acceptable at all. As Muslims, we definitely condemn these kind of actions, and we do not at all support the terrorists at all whatsoever.
Okay, notice how we exaggerated it a little. We do not support the terrorists at all whatsoever. And note how we claim to speak for the entire Muslim community. These people are protecting their own community from scrutinization. When these type of people implement Taqiyya, they're basically doing it for the greater good. They're doing it for a higher purpose, so to speak. Islam, the Ummah, the Jihad, Allah, from their perspective, is really the right thing to do. The next imam is really hilarious. Let's take a look.
And our religion does not teach terrorism. Our religion does not encourage to kill other people, whether they are Muslims or non-Muslim. It is absolutely not acceptable to take any single life, innocent life, in any country. And I will just end this statement by saying that all of us are very saddened whenever we hear of these kinds of news. And we feel for you, those families, those left behind, and we pray for your families as well.
So this is an imam from Islamnet, an online Islamic platform. Now remember what he said and watch this next video.
Every now and then, every time we have a conference, every time we invite a speaker, they always can come with the same accusations. This speaker supports death penalty for homosexuals. This speaker supports death penalty for this crime or that he is homophobic. They subjugate women, etc., etc., etc. It's the same old stuff coming all the time. And we always try to tell them, I always try to tell them that, look, it's not that speaker that we're inviting who has these extreme radical views, as you say. These are general views that every Muslim actually has. Every Muslim believes in these things. Just because they're not telling you about it, or just because they're not out there in the media, doesn't mean they don't believe in them. So I will ask you, how many of you agree that the punishments described in the Quran and the Sunnah, whether it is death, whether it is stoning for adultery, whatever it is, if it is from Allah and His Messenger, that is the best punishment ever possible for humankind. And that is what we should apply in the world. Who agrees with that? Allahu Akbar. Are you all radical extremists? Subhanallah.
So as you can see, it's the same guy from the same organization. So here you have it, a sudden rise in Taqiyya after the Manchester attack. This is how Islam works. Not all Muslims, but many. And especially the leaders, the imams, know exactly what they're doing. And I think it must be so easy for these type of people to implement Taqiyya. Nobody realizes it. And to even suggest that they're lying would definitely get a bad response from the average politically correct individual. How dare you accuse them of lying? You are just spreading hatred. Well, think again. Taqiyya is extremely common. They do it globally, even in Mexico.
Y nuestra religión, como dije, el Islam deriva de la palabra silm y salam, que es paz. Como una religión llamada paz puede invocar la guerra, porque la gente no reflexiona. El Islam, y lo digo yo como creyente, somos inocentes completamente, pero completamente lo absoluto de cualquier acto.
Yep, they do it all around the world. Learn Taqiyya, people. Learn what it is and you'll be amazed. This is Paul Nielsen from debatetheleft.com. Don't forget to subscribe and never stop debating the left on Islam. Take care.